There's a sound a person makes when pride snaps. It's not loud. It's not theatrical. It's a catch in the throat, a flattening of the voice, a look at the ground like the ground holds mercy. If you've ever heard it, you don't forget. I heard it when Ryan showed up on my sister's porch the morning after he changed the locks on our house. He had a baseball cap pulled low and sunglasses, even though the sky was winter white. He stood on Hannah's front steps with his shoulders squared like he'd practiced that posture in the rearview mirror. I watched from the couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like my sister's detergent, that lemon lily powder smell I never noticed before. I hadn't slept. The night had been a pile of jagged minutes, each cutting a little different. My phone kept lighting up with texts I didn't open. Group chats. Old friends. A message from his mother that said, "Are you proud of yourself?" He knocked once, then again, softer. It was 6 in the morning. Hannah peeked into the living room, eyebrows up, a warning in her eyes that said, "You don't have to do this." But I stood anyway. I wasn't noble. I was numb in a way that felt like nobility might look. I was still in yesterday's jeans, socks that didn't match. When I opened the door, cold air slipped around my ankles. Ryan lowered his sunglasses. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked older than he had the night before. "Nora," he said. He tried to smile. It landed wrong. "Can we talk?" "Why?" I heard my voice and didn't recognize it. Scratchy. Flat. Like it was coming from somewhere farther back. "Please," he said, and that word hit the way you never expect from a man who, 12 hours ago, said, "Get your things and go." He shifted, hands in coat pockets, like the pockets might deliver a better argument. "It's important. You told me not to come back." I held the door closer to my body, as if the sliver of wood between us could add backbone. "You told me I stopped myself before I repeated it." I watched his jaw work like he tasted his own words, and they turned bitter. "I know what I said," he said. "I didn't mean," he exhaled through his nose like he was about to say something noble about heat of the moment and big emotions and new reality. He swallowed that, too. "I need the code to the safe." There it was. The ground opened a little. Not for mercy, but for truth. I didn't blink. "The safe in the hall closet," I said. "The one I bought after the first time you borrowed Owen's gift cards and forgot." His eyes flicked to Hannah's car in the driveway like the answer might be written on her dusty back window. "I can't find the paper you wrote it on." "That's because I didn't write it on a paper," I said. "I told you I would never write it down." He pressed his lips. The wind lifted the brim of his cap. He reached up, pressed it down. Somewhere inside, the coffee machine hissed. Hannah's dog barked once and stopped. "Nora," he said, low. "They're waiting at the lottery office. They're expecting us to come in. To do a photo, I think." I told them we wanted to stay anonymous, but they said it's state by state, and he stumbled over bureaucratic words like they'd never been in his mouth before. "They said a lawyer should look at it, but we can't do anything without the actual, you know." "The ticket," I said. He nodded, his eyes cutting to the side like the word was too bright. Behind him, Maple Glen's morning cracked open, mail trucks, kids on bicycles with backpacks too big, a neighbor scraping ice from a windshield. Ordinary, ordinary. It should have been ordinary. He'd bought the ticket the way he always did, on a brief run for milk, a scratch-off tucked into the brown bag like a secret treat. Except this time it wasn't a scratch-off. It was a Mega Millions quick pick from the Caseys by the high school, with the clerk who wore a name tag that said Marie and chewed gum like it was a job. He'd plucked numbers out of a machine and walked back into our kitchen with milk sweating onto his wrist, not knowing that paper in his pocket was about to detonate our life. "Please," he said again. "We should go together. We should claim it today." He said we the way you might when you're trying to pull a rope that's already frayed. Hannah stood behind me now, silent backup. She looked at me, and I could see the question in her eyes. "What do you want to do?" Not "what do you think you should do?" Not "what would make it easier?" "What do you want?" "Our son has a clinic appointment at 10, I said. "Dr. Chang wants new labs." "You forgot." His head dipped. When he looked back up, his face had rearranged itself into something like contrition. "We can go after," he said quickly. Or, he hesitated. "I could meet you there. Or I could go with you. Whatever you want." I know last night was Last night you told me I was the dead weight of your life, I said, clean, simple, factual. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. His cheeks flushed. He took off his sunglasses, wiped them with a corner of his coat, bought himself seconds. I was scared, he said. It's a lot of money. I freaked out. My mom. Don't, I said. Don't bring your mom into this like she's a thunderstorm that just happens over your head. He swallowed. I need the code, Nora. Do you need me? I asked, or do you need my code? I stepped a fraction of an inch into the space between us, enough that I could see the uneven shave under his jawline, the place he always missed. He didn't answer, not right away. Then he nodded. Both, he said. Honest, finally. Here are the terms, I said, and even as I said it, my hands shook inside the sleeves of my sweater. We go to Owen's appointment. Together. We talk to Dr. Chang about the new protocol she mentioned. We stop pretending he'll grow out of this like it's a phase. After that, we'll talk about the safe. He blinked at the word protocol like it was a language he hadn't learned. He looked past me, into the living room where Hannah's couch sat soft and lived in, where a pile of Owen's clothes folded the way I fold them waited in a laundry basket, where the mug with the chip on the handle sat on the coffee table with a cold, half-drunk tea I'd started in the middle of the night. Okay, he said. Okay. 10. I'll drive. No, I said. I will. He nodded again, collecting himself around the yes he'd give to anything I requested. Hannah, he said, lifting a hand, trying a smile. Thanks for letting me. Hannah didn't smile. This is her house right now, she said. You don't need to thank me for what you told her to do. He inhaled. Exhaled. That sound again, the snap of something you only hear if you're listening. I'll be outside, he said. He walked back to his car, a black SUV that still smelled like dealer plastic, the one he'd insisted on 2 months ago for safety. He drove away last night in it while I stood on our porch with 2 bags and a 10-year-old asleep at Hannah's, believing I'd never look inside that car again. Now he waited in it like a kid in a timeout, his head bowed over his phone, thumb tapping, the world watching on the other end of a rumor mill I hadn't consented to join. I shut the door. Hannah put a hand on my back and left it there. I kept my palm flat against the painted wood. I didn't cry. There are tears that come from sadness and tears that come from rage and tears that come from relief. That morning, my body held all 3 and none, a glass that wouldn't tip. Owen's footsteps thudded down the hallway. Is he here? My son asked. He had on his fuzzy socks with the little grippers and his favorite shirt with the astronaut planting a flag on a big blue planet. His cheeks were pale, those crescents under his eyes a shade darker than they were 2 days ago. He's outside, I said. We're going to your appointment. Then we'll see. Owen looked at me with ground truth eyes that had always seen more than I was ready to admit. Did he say he was sorry? Not yet, I said. Okay, he said. He leaned into me, small shoulder pressing my hip, a stand-in for a hug when he was too tired to lift both arms. Can I sit in the front? Not until you're 12, I said, and the normal of that rule landed between us like a porch light in a blackout. We packed the bag we always packed, snacks he might want but might not, the clipboard with his symptom journal, the folder with insurance letters, the stuffed rabbit he didn't sleep with anymore but liked to hold sometimes when the needles were too much. We stepped into a cold morning, the kind of cold that makes your bones feel like bells. I locked Hannah's door behind me. By 10, we were in the clinic. By noon, the terms would turn into a deal. By 4, a news truck would park at the end of our street. Before it broke. If you ask me where the crack started, I'd say there was never a single crack. It was hairline lines branching under paint, hiding under the prettiness, while we took photos in front of birthday cakes and told each other stories about our good luck. We met when I was 23 and he was 27, that age where a person's kindness can look like character and their ambition can look like stability. I was working the circulation desk at the Maple Glen Public Library, finishing my degree at night. The longest year of my life where I slept 4 hours on Tuesdays and kept index cards in my back pocket with words like scantron and payroll and adjudication underlined twice. Ryan came in one afternoon during a thunderstorm that got into the building through the old window frames. He shook himself like a wet retriever and smoothed his tie. He asked where the business section was, and then didn't leave, hovering at my desk with a stack of titles that said things like the most productive you and the 10-minute MBA. You're too young for a midlife crisis, I joked. He smiled in a way that made a person feel seen, the way some people walk into a room and can arrange furniture by instinct. I'm building something, he said. Just trying to get my head right. He was running sales for a small HVAC company then, the kind that had a few vans with vinyl logos and sponsors the T-ball team. He wore Oxford shirts from the outlet mall and always had a bit of cologne on like the day I expected him to show up with a point to make. He asked me out on a Saturday to the bowling alley, which he framed as cute and retro. He was an average bowler and a good listener, and when he laughed, people at the lanes looked over. We ate cheap pizza, and he got us pitchers of root beer, and I told him about my favorite childhood librarian, Mrs. Klein, who let me stay when my mom was late and who taught me how to fix a broken lamination spring with a hair tie. Marry me, he said jokingly when I explained how to use a microfiche machine, and I laughed and said don't say that unless you mean it, because I was the kind of woman who collects coffee mugs and guardrails. Our first year was easy. We rented a small 2-bedroom on Birch Street with a landlord who lived upstairs and knew how to fix things quickly. We shared a car and had a grocery envelope we fed with $10 bills. We put our change in a jar for a vacation we never took. He'd kiss my knuckles at stoplights. He'd cook spaghetti when I had late study nights and leave me notes on napkins with doodles of me with big hair and a superhero cape labeled Research Queen. When I finished my degree and got a job at the district office as a registrar, we celebrated with cheap champagne and a road trip to the lake with sandwiches in a cooler and the windows down. He got promoted to area manager. We got a second car. He picked out a house at the edge of Maple Glen, a split level with a maple tree out front and a fence that needed replacing, and said, I can see us here. He saw himself as a sometime soon person. You know the type. We were going to remodel sometime soon. We were going to go to Napa sometime soon. We were going to try for a baby sometime soon. He filled the future with promises like helium balloons, enough that we learned to walk bent a little, heads tilted back to keep them from floating away. Owen arrived a year and a half after we moved in. He was urgent from day one, hungry and impatient, a baby who made every nurse laugh because he ate like a 19-year-old athlete. He had a perfect cowlick in front and a dimple on one side, like his smile got caught on a hook when it was forming. Ryan held him with reverence that first week and then with confidence, bouncing him in that midnight loop between kitchen and living room, a new planet in our house around which everything orbited. I thought if there were cracks, the glue is set now. I thought we are safe. But time is a slow truth teller. It lets you live in a story until the story can't hold anymore. When Owen was 5, he started getting tired early. He'd climb up the slide twice and sit at the top instead of whooshing down. His teacher, a woman who wore bright bracelets and paid attention, called me with her voice angled carefully. He asked to put his head down after lunch, she said. Once is nothing. Twice. I figured you'd want to know. We brought him to Summit Valley Medical Center for labs with a pediatrician who had stickers in his pocket and a tap-tap rhythm he did on Owen's shoulder before a needle. The results were the first season finale in a series I wouldn't have chosen for anyone. Iron low. Platelets a hair under the line. Mostly harmless, the doctor said. Could be a virus. Let's recheck. 3 weeks later, the recheck had numbers that fell a little further. Then came a referral to hematology. Then an ultrasound. Then a biopsy. Then a name I learned to pronounce on a Thursday in a room with a poster of happy cartoon blood cells on the wall like they could cheer us through it. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, Dr. Chang said, steady. She was small and precise and had a way of looking at you that made you want to tell her the truth even if it would cost you. The good news, if there is good news, is that this is the type with the best long-term outcomes. We have protocols that work. We'll start soon. I was floating and sinking at once. Ryan sat straight-backed in the chair, his leg bouncing until he pinned it down with a hand. He nodded at words like port and consolidation and maintenance. He asked about timelines and odds. He took the brochure. He folded it in half, then in half again, until I put my hand over his and he stopped. We told our families. My sister Hannah held me on her couch while Owen watched a cartoon he pretended not to understand because I was using it like a shield. My mom brought casseroles in the containers we all have, labeled with permanent marker so they could find their way back. Ryan's mom, Darlene, cried for herself. She cried about her father, who had sensitive stomach issues in 1972, and about how stressful her last Christmas was, and about how she'd always known Ryan attracted stress. She hugged me like she was patting down a fire. She told me to keep the faith, and I nodded because I didn't have space in me that day to correct metaphors or boundaries. After she left, I wiped down my counters like I could control the next 10 years with a sponge. Chemo began. We learned the rhythm of pre-meds and steroids that made Owen's cheeks puff out like he was storing seeds. We set alarms for every dose like they were the only clocks left in the world. We learned how to park at the garage across from the oncology wing and take the skybridge so we could watch the river change colors in different seasons. We learned the nurses' names: Candace, who wore her hair in a bun that always came undone by noon, whose laugh landed like a door swung open; Jamal, who wore bright socks and told Owen jokes that started with knock knock and turned into something else; Mira, who drew medication from vials like a magician performing the trick of making you safe. Ryan went to most appointments. He was there for the big ones. He made spreadsheets. He built a binder. He liked to feel like an assistant coach on Team Owen. He lined up our ducks and then counted them again in a low voice. When his boss cut him slack, he gave a dramatic speech and came home and told me he might quit, and I nodded, and then he said it was better he didn't. Better to keep money coming in steady. He also started buying more lottery tickets. He'd always liked the games. Scratch-offs were his thing, little scratch sessions at the kitchen counter while I stirred sauce that needed to simmer 20 minutes. He'd scratch and say, "I'm feeling lucky," and laugh like it was a private joke that luck had decided to take up residency in our split level. He said, if we won, I'd buy Dr. Chang the biggest coffee machine in the world. He said, if we won, I'd buy an RV, and we'd drive to the Grand Canyon and Owen could see everything you can see from the skybridge, but in person. He said, if we won, I'd fix everything. It was a fantasy that let him be the hero in a way being a dad didn't always allow. Being a dad when a kid is sick is being a helper. The lottery let him imagine he was a savior. We don't need miracles, I told him one night gently. We just need Tuesday's lab draw. I know, he said. He turned the silver coin over on the table. It's just fun. The tickets multiplied. 2 became 4 became a sheet he'd circle numbers on with a pen from our junk drawer. It's only money, he said when I frowned. He kissed my forehead. I got overtime this week. Money was a thing we never had enough of, the way a person never has enough breath when they're running uphill. Insurance covered more than I expected, less than we needed. The pharmacy receipts were a novella. I started keeping a ledger. I made files and subfiles. I printed everything. Receipts over rumors I wrote on the first folder because misremembering costs too much. Under the stress, we both changed in little ways that turned into big ones if you looked back from far enough away. I became quiet in arguments, my instinct to persuade replaced by an atmosphere I created with my silence. I learned to carry conversations with doctors and teachers and billing offices like a tray with fine china. You hold it with 2 hands, you keep it level, you stare straight ahead. Ryan grew sharper, more reactive. His sense of fairness turned into a scale he carried everywhere and used to measure strangers. He told a nurse she was wrong about a dosage when she wasn't. He snapped at a receptionist for not finding a paper that was exactly where it was supposed to be. He hated feeling small, so he kept growing his voice to fill the room. We started having the kind of arguments that end with someone saying, "This isn't about dishes," and then no one knowing what it is about because it is about everything. We'd stand in the kitchen, the maple cabinets worn where our hands always touch, the light over the sink buzzing, Owen asleep on the couch, skinny arms thrown wide, Cartoon Network murmuring a lullaby. I'd say, "I need you to be kinder," and he'd say, "I need you to be less controlling," and we'd both be right and wrong in ways that canceled out any progress. And then there was Darlene, who made everything worse in ways she would swear were meant to make things better. She'd pop over without calling and bring a bag of supplements that a neighbor swears by. She'd ask me if I was taking care of myself, then tell me how tired she was from the worry. She'd text Ryan during chemo, tiny paragraphs about how no one appreciated what he was going through. She'd call Owen her little soldier. I started keeping a list of phrases that made my jaw ache because I was clenching my teeth. Soldier. Fighter. Brave. The words made it sound like bravery could fix blood cells. They made it sound like dying was a failure. I carried those words like pebbles I couldn't put down. There were also bright points I set like posts to tie myself to. Owen's teacher, Ms. Alvarez, came to one of his clinic days with a stack of cards from the class, each kid's messy, wonderful handwriting saying things like, "I hope your tummy feels less icky." Our neighbor Miguel mowed our lawn without saying anything, like the grass asked him personally. Candace smuggled Owen extra days of the week socks from the supply closet because he thought the ones with the Wednesday frog were lucky. Dr. Chang told me I was doing everything right on a Thursday when I needed a sentence to hold on to more than I needed lunch. The year turned. Owen's hair grew back, then thinned again. He went to school 3 days a week, then not at all for a stretch when flu season hit our town hard. He got better at understanding his own body. He'd say, "I'm a 7," when I asked how he felt, and I knew the scale he used wasn't about pain, not exactly. It was about energy, about light. 7 meant he could walk the dog with me. 4 meant cartoons and floor bed and the rabbit tucked under his chin. 10 meant go to the park and pretend you can't catch me and believe it. Ryan kept the tickets in a drawer by the fridge. He signed the back sometimes, the way the instructions told you to, his handwriting thick, letters squished like they were in a hurry. I asked him to stop signing them because what if one was real? What if he signed and left them somewhere? What if a stranger used his name to take something that could be ours? He laughed and said, "You think this stuff happens?" And I said, "I think everything you can imagine happens somewhere." And he said, "Now you sound like my grandma." And I said nothing because his grandma was quiet and mean and long gone. We had a good week in May that felt like June. Owen ran around the yard with a kite shaped like a dragon and the string cut into my fingers, and I let it because the feeling of it was proof I was real. Ryan grilled chicken. He stood at the grill with a beer and looked content in a way I hadn't seen in months. He called me Bug like he used to when we were new. The music from someone else's patio drifted into the neighborhood, and for an hour, we were the people I thought we'd be if we ever got rest. The next day, the lab called. The numbers weren't where they should be. Relapse, Dr. Chang said in the soft room with the soft share they never offered to anyone unless the word was going to be big. It happens. It doesn't mean our work was for nothing. I took notes like the notes were the work. Ryan stared at the top of his shoe and flexed his toes until the leather creased. Darlene called Ryan from the parking lot to say she'd been praying on it and then said she had a friend with a cousin who cured his back pain with herbs. We started over, except starting over is a lie. You don't start over. You move forward with all the weight you've already gathered strapped to your back, and you call it something you can survive. The tickets didn't slow. If anything, they multiplied. What had been a way to daydream turned into a ritual that steadied him, a thing he could do when he couldn't fix the rest. He'd stop at the Casey's on his way home and buy a pack, chaff off the end of a weary day, a way to mark the line between the world out there and the world in here. He started saying things like, "When we win, not if." I started ignoring those sentences, not because I'm unromantic, but because I'm someone who has learned to count pill bottles. We were a year and change into the long story when the headline happened. Neither of us knew it was a headline yet. It was just a night where our son was asleep on the couch, a cartoon murmured on low, and my husband walked in with a brown bag and a piece of paper that held numbers that would rearrange us. Pressure builds. The night before everything broke looked almost boring if you didn't know the chemistry of what was inside it. We had spaghetti. Owen ate 3 meatballs and declared himself the new record holder. Ryan came home from an estimate run later than usual. The March evening pitched in that particular gray that makes your brain think it's midnight at 6:30. He put the brown bag on the counter, kissed Owen's hair, kissed the top of my head and said, "You look tired." "I am," I said. I had been up at 4 to make sure we got a slot for the clinic lab before school, then back home to run laundry, then back to school to drop off assignments for Owen to finish when he felt up to it. My planner was a map of a city only I could read. "I stopped for milk," he said. He took out the carton and a crinkly bag of pretzels. He left the receipt on the counter. I glanced at it. For things. The last line said, MMQP $2. You'd think the way it would say everything and nothing would have a font you'd recognize. But it doesn't. It's a line like any other. Your mom called, I said. Of course she did, he said without inflection. She was checking the timing for Sunday. Ryan's cousin was having a Christ, I cut the word in my head. A family thing at a hall on the edge of town. Lunch and speeches and a photo backdrop. The kind of event where Darlene would want to arrive late and say hello to everyone like she was Santa. Tell her we're a maybe, he said. Tell her our kid has an immune system like tissue paper. I did, I said. She said it would hurt Uncle Tony if we didn't show. He rolled his eyes, a move he'd started doing when he knew I'd already made the reasonable call. It hurts my soul that Uncle Tony loves indoor confetti more than my child. He took his shoes off and lined them up on the mat so they didn't make little commas of dirt across the entryway. He washed his hands. He scratched his chest through his shirt, that absent-minded way he did when he was thinking about money. He pulled a wad of tickets from his pocket. He spread them like a hand of cards on the table. I moved Owen's folder out of the way so we didn't get cranberry sauce on a $1,000 piece of paper by accident. Babe, I said. What, he said, not defensive, ending the word with a short exhale like he knew I was going to say something practical. Not on the dinner table. He gathered them and put them on the counter. I'm just sorting. Sort somewhere else, I said. We eat here. Let's eat. We ate. Owen did the thing he started doing where he pressed his lips together after each bite like he had to hold the food in and do a breath count before he could let his body have it. He did 7 after the second meatball. He did 5 after a noodle, then rolled it like a scroll on his fork. He smiled at me through it like we were both conspirators in a game the fork was losing. After dinner, we can finish your science project, I said. Which is basically art, he said, eyes light. It's art with glue and facts. It's a poster about the water cycle, Ryan said, playful. Please respect the water cycle. After we cleaned up, Ryan set up on the kitchen counter with the tickets and the app. He scanned barcodes like a blackjack dealer who might strike gold if he kept the rhythm right. Beep, beep, beep. Little dings of small wins. $2. $10. Losing ticket. Losing ticket. Free ticket. He tapped through the freebie like it offended him. Owen and I worked at the dining table, construction paper and markers and a printout of the water cycle I had pulled from a reliable website. He cut the blue arrows with concentration, tongue poking out. He arranged evaporate and condense and precipitate like he was setting the table for a fancy dinner. Evaporate is my favorite word, he said. It's a good one, I said. It's like, it's not gone. It's just somewhere else. I felt the ghost of a future conversation where I needed that metaphor. I tucked it into the ledger I keep in my mind. Receipts over rumors, even for feelings. Ryan turned on the TV to catch the local news. He always watched the set that started at 9. He liked knowing cars had crashed where he wasn't. He liked the sports guy who called the high school quarterback a young phenom, and then winked at the camera like he had invented humility. The anchor did a serious face about a storm on the edge of the county. Owen drew a cloud. I loaded the dishwasher. I heard the beep from the app. Not the usual beep. A louder chirp, the little firework noise it makes when a ticket is the kind you can't just cash at a gas station. The sound my brain had filed under not for me. Ryan froze. Then he laughed, a short, surprised sound. He tapped again. The app said, redeem at lottery office. The app said, winner of $10,000 or more. Yeah, right, he said, and then, softer, holy, he looked at me. Babe. What, I said, not looking yet because hope is heavy and I'd already handled too many heavy things that day. He leaned over the counter, hands braced. It's saying, he blew out air. He held up the screen. It was just pixels. It was everything. I don't understand that app, I said. My voice did the thing it does when it's a second behind reality. It glitches. He laughed again, louder, hope landing in the middle of the kitchen like an uninvited guest we both wanted to be polite to. He picked up the phone, not the app, his phone. He Googled winners. He Googled how to claim. He Googled what to do first. He opened the state lottery website, The ugly one that looked like it had been designed by a second cousin in 2010. He entered the numbers. He read them out loud, slowly, like a wish. He held our ticket under the light. The numbers matched. "Babe," he said, and his face did a thing I hadn't seen before. Not at our wedding, not when Owen was born. He looked terrified and invincible. "Nora. Nora." I watched him like you watch a person on a cliff face, waiting to see which way gravity belongs to them. "It says 500 million, he said, a whisper, a reverence he had never reserved for anything else. That can't be. That can't be, can it? Could it be a mistake?" I asked. He shook his head, eyes moving left to right like he was reading a contract and making the devil feel nervous. "No. No. The evening drawing. The numbers. The jackpot rolled over. Baby, it hit." Owen looked up. "What hit?" "Nothing," Ryan said quickly, the way a person says nothing when he's holding a firework. "Just grown-up stuff." "Like taxes?" Owen asked, unimpressed. Ryan laughed. His laughter morphed into something else that made my stomach muscles tense. He held the ticket with 2 fingers like he might break it. He looked at me like I was the only person who knew him and the only person who could ruin him. "We need to sign it," he said. "We need to go first thing." We need to slow down," I said. "We need a plan. We need a lawyer." He nodded too quickly, a person agreeing to requirements on a roller coaster he's already decided to ride. "Yes. Yes. We'll get a lawyer. We'll get 3. We'll be smart. This doesn't happen. But maybe it happened to us." "Nora," he was almost crying now, and I didn't recognize his voice. We could buy time." That sentence cracked the dam. He wasn't thinking of boats. He wasn't thinking of suits or watches or the Tesla he made jokes about. He was thinking we could buy time like we buy oxygen, like time would take cash and give us years back. I looked at Owen, at his soft scalp where new hair came in brave, at the poster with glue going clear, at the little bowl of beads he kept on the table because he liked sorting them by color even when he said he was too old to make bracelets. I wanted to buy time so badly my hands shook. The ticket, though. The ticket was paper in the air between us. Paper like fire. "Let's put it in the safe," I said, calm. Practical. Superstitious, too, but I didn't say that out loud. The safe was where I kept passports and birth certificates and the memory card from our wedding photographer. The safe had a code I never wrote down and never said out loud in one piece to anyone. The safe made me feel like I was an adult in a world where adults could prevent things. Ryan looked at the safe, at the hall closet where it sat on the floor under the shelf with the extra paper towels. He nodded. He put the ticket in a Ziploc bag like that made anything truly waterproof. He handed it to me because he knew this part was mine. "I'll call a lawyer in the morning," he said. "We'll go together. We'll be careful." "Okay," I said. We put Owen to bed later, after he insisted on finishing the water cycle poster because you can't stop a cycle in the middle. Ryan kissed his head and said he was proud. Owen rolled onto his side and tucked the rabbit under his chin and fell asleep with the determination of a kid who has learned sleep is a job. When the house was quiet, Ryan and I stood in the kitchen, facing each other across the miles a kitchen can hold. He reached for me. He laughed a little nervous. "We did it," he said. "We didn't do anything," I said. "We got lucky." I said it gently because I could see what he needed the story to be, that his years of buying tickets found him. That his vow to come through finally paid off. He needed to be the protagonist of a plot that ended here. He withdrew his hand. He rolled his shoulders back and then dropped them again. He said, "I know," but he didn't mean it. We went to bed. I slept in the way you don't so much sleep as turn off, my body kindly giving me a blink. At 3, I woke up and stared at the ceiling fan and felt the crushing panic of every decision we would have to make. At 4, I got up and checked Owen's breathing like I did on bad nights. At 5, I unlocked the safe. I checked the bag. The paper was there. I locked it again. I wrote the code in a place in my head only I could find. At 6, I made coffee I didn't drink. At 7, Ryan's phone started vibrating with texts. People already knew. He'd told someone. Someone told someone else. News sits like a cat on that kind of windowsill. It waits for the sun. By 8, his mother was at our door. Darlene wore lipstick like she had an audience. She clasped my hands in both of hers like I was a niece who'd come home from a fancy camp. You too, she said, breathy, enormous. I knew something big would happen for you. I knew it. She saw herself in every story Ryan told, no matter how small the role. She was the mother of the winner now. She would have a crown to wear at every Sunday dinner for the rest of her life. We're going to be quiet about this, Ryan said, firm. He was still on my team then, the team that keeps careful, keeps quiet, keeps the ticket in plastic. He hadn't yet turned toward the edge. Darlene flapped her hand. Of course, she said, which meant, I will call one person. You deserve it, baby. She kissed his cheek. She looked at me over his shoulder like I was the treasurer for a club she didn't mean to join. She said, not quite under her breath, finally. That word finally landed like a rock. Finally, you're enough. Finally, you won. Finally, I can stop pretending not to find you wanting for not being enough. The day turned into a parade of calls and texts and one door knock from a reporter who somehow got our address. Ryan turned him away with a laugh that made the man feel a little silly and then watched through the blinds as he left. The wind picked up. The forecast said maybe a storm. The air had that too still feeling. By late afternoon, we'd done nothing but plan. We hadn't called a lawyer. We hadn't called the lottery office. We hadn't called Dr. Chang. I was the one who said, we still have an appointment tomorrow, and Ryan said, of course, absolutely, in a voice that didn't sound like the dad who counted doses. I made us a rule then. The rule was, the jackpot was a layer. Owen was the cake. Around 5, Ryan's phone pinged. Darlene again, a text of champagne bubbles and confetti. He typed something. He put the phone face down on the counter. What did she say? I asked. Nothing, he said. She's just excited. We ate leftovers. Owen had 2 bites and fell asleep on the couch at 7, a too early surrender that never boded well for a peaceful night. I covered him with the green quilt. Ryan stood in the doorway and stared at him like a man looking at a lighthouse from a storm. He didn't reach for my hand. At 8, we argued. We didn't mean to. It started with something like, we should talk about my mom, and then it fell into a hole, like so many of our talks did. I said I needed space from her, that she was already making me feel like a gatekeeper to her son's fantasy. He said I was trying to ice her out, that she was just excited, that she would calm down. I said, and you, how are you going to calm down? He said, I am calm. I said, you aren't listening. He said, you're not being grateful. And then we were both saying things neither of us would cross out later in a neat apology, and the words stacked up like furniture blocking the door. I have done everything, I said finally, my voice low. I have done everything while you've told yourself a ticket would save us. It was a wound he had pressed a palm to and pretended wasn't there. When I said it, he yanked the hand away and looked at the blood. He stepped close. His face was a mix of hurt and something else, something hot that made me want to step back and did not make me afraid, exactly, but made me wary. You don't get to act like I didn't hold up this family, he said. I never said you didn't hold us up, I said. But you dropped us sometimes because you were chasing a. His mouth tightened. Say it, he said. Say what you think I'm chasing. A story where you're the hero and the rest of us are extras, I said. It was cruel. It was also not a lie. He flinched. He turned away from me like he might leave the room. He turned back. I'm going to make all of this right, he said. You'll see. Make tonight right, I said. Do the dishes. Put Owen to bed. Schedule the lawyer. He laughed. It wasn't kind. You love to run the program. I love to keep our kid alive, I said. He snarled. I'd never seen his face like that, not in 12 years, not once. He'd been impatient, he'd been cutting, he'd never been cruel like that with his mouth. What does it feel like, he said, being the anchor that keeps this family from moving forward? My vision went weird for a second, the way your brain does when someone says something that lands so far left of anything you expected it drops a veil. I looked past him and saw our sink. Saw the mug on the counter with a chip. Saw the stack of mail. Saw the little dinosaur sticker on the fridge that Owen had stuck too low because he was shorter then, and I'd left it there because I liked the story of time it told. Get out, I said, voice even. He blinked. Excuse me? Leave the kitchen, I said. Go outside. Cool off. I live here, he said. And so do I said. He laughed, that same unkind sound, the kind people make when they want you to be ashamed for having needs. He looked at the hall closet. He looked at me. Give me the code, he said. Not now, I said. Give me the code, he repeated, louder. This is not the moment, I said. He stepped past me. He went to the closet. He rolled the safe out like he was ready to arm wrestle it. He tapped at the keypad, random numbers, as if you could hack into a marriage with stubbornness. The safe did its little error beep, cheerful and small, unbothered by our drama. Ryan, I said quietly. He reached for me. He didn't touch me. He grabbed the edge of the closet shelf where I keep the extra paper towels. He ripped one off like it insulted him. He dropped it on the floor. The smallness of the gesture was indecent. You don't get to control this, he said, breathing hard. This is mine. No, I said calmly. This is ours. And more importantly, this will be Owen's. He looked at me then like he remembered we had a child in the house, and like he remembered that child hears things. He looked at the living room, at the small body under the green quilt. He lowered his voice, but didn't soften it. Pack a bag, he said. Go stay at Hannah's. It took me a second to understand. You're telling me to leave our house. He shrugged with a bravado that slotted into him like it had been shaped just for his shoulders. I want quiet tonight. I want space. You make everything loud. I make everything real, I said. When people keep their heads, they look like monsters to people who refuse to. He gestured at the door. Please leave. I looked at Owen again. The quiet on the couch was that heavy kind of kid sleep that means he won't wake unless a siren comes through the living room. I moved slowly. I went to our room. I stood in the doorway. I could take a bag for a night. I could leave, be smart, come back in the morning when his oxygen returned to him. I opened the dresser. I put 2 t-shirts in the duffel from college. I put underwear and socks and my toothbrush in the side zipper. I put Owen's extra stuffed rabbit in the front pocket and then took it out because I didn't want to confuse mourning him. I took the folder with his documents because I don't leave those anywhere I'm not. I took my planner because I love being able to hold my life in my hands. I didn't take the ticket because I wanted to survive tonight, not win the war. I went into the living room. I wrote Hannah a text. Coming over. Will explain. I wrote Dr. Chang a message through the portal. Coming to 10 a.m. Will bring updated symptom journal. I put on my coat. I went to the couch. I kissed Owen's forehead without waking him and whispered, back soon. Ryan stood by the door, one hand on the knob like he was helping. His face had that tightness men get when they know they have done a thing they justified and will be chased by it forever. Don't, he started. Say anything you can't take back? I said. He looked down. Yeah, there would be 100 versions of the story of this night in his head. There would be one in mine. They would intersect at a few truths like street corners. We'd never fully reconcile them. That's how marriages end, not with a bang, but with a map no one can read the same way. I walked out. The air bit. The sky was a flat pane of dark. A neighbor's TV flickered blue in their front room. I could hear the distant sound of someone's music, bass heavy, too late for a Tuesday. I put my bag in the car. I sat in the driver's seat. My hands wanted to shake and didn't. I drove the 6 minutes to Hannah's on streets I could drive and sleep. When I got there, she was already on the porch in sweatpants and a hoodie with bleach stains, hair up with a pencil. She hugged me and didn't say I told you when it would have felt so good to say I told you. She put the kettle on. She made a bed on her couch like she was muscle memory. She tucked the quilt around me. She said, I'm on your team, like I needed reminding. I fell asleep seated, back against the arm of the couch, duffel under my knees like a guard dog. If you had frozen time then and looked at the two of us, you would have said we were all banged up but alive. You would not have known that our ticket sat in the dark in a safe that beeped politely when anyone asked it to confess. At 6 a.m., Ryan knocked on my sister's door with his hat low and sunglasses on and his pride in his pocket. And he said please.